him as we are now loaded into the first game here to kick off this Terran versus Terran in the bottom left position of Overgrowth. Our first player in blue representing Team Millennium, he's ForGG.
And on the right top side of Overgrowth, the man who's been spending a lot of time in America, he's Cooler Master Storm, it is Polt.
The last televised broadcast where these two guys went up in a live event on Overgrowth. ForGG did an insane amount of early damage and kind of just killed him really fast after a solid Banshee opening.
Okay, but they had another game on Overgrowth, which I believe was the same tournament or like a week before that, where I think Polt picked up his 8 Marines and flew them over the Zelnaga Watchtower, where ForGG had like 8 Marines standing near that Zelnaga Watchtower, and he killed the medevac with all 8 Marines in it, and needless to say, 40 seconds later it was absolutely GG, because it was 2 Hellions against 2 Hellions and 8 Marines and a medevac.
May have very well been that same game. You know, they played against each other, as Fender mentioned, at DreamHack Winter. In the winner's bracket, just to start things off, ForGG took a very clean 3-0, 2 very aggressive games, and then that series was closed out with a bit more of a drawn-out mech game from ForGG against Polt. Of course, merry-go-round is no longer in the map pool, and I think that kind of opens up the matchup a bit more. But this is a more condensed map for TVT. This is one of those places where the doom drops are a bit trickier. You can defend your main base a bit easier. There's not so many angles to drop. There is, of course, always that siege range behind the natural you have to worry about.
ForGG has won the last 5 maps in a row against Polt. He's currently riding a 5-0 record. And to go back even further, the last time that Polt defeated ForGG was in 2012. That's ancient history in StarCraft 2. I don't even remember what I was doing in 2012.
Wings of Liberty. It's like, yeah, we're going way back.
Actually, I was still all-inning, and not much has changed.
Well, I was still in Diamond League, I think, back then. But this
not much has changed. Oh, I'm just kidding, Nate. I know you're Grandmaster League.
Thanks to ForGG's builds. I've been studying this guy for a long time. ForGG is going for what we could call the standard way to play Terran versus Terran these days. A lot of gas first builds. It's got a super fast factory, fast second gas. This looks pretty much like a classic Cloak Banshee opening. ForGG is also one of the few Terran players that is okay with opening for a fast Raven as well. He really likes to follow up Raven plays with counterattacks after holding off a Banshee from his opponent with a lot of Hellions and sometimes even landed Vikings. So Polt will need to be on top of everything, because the last series that they played to start off those 5 maps in a row, ForGG killed him 2 games in a row with Mass Blue Flame Hellions.
Yeah, it was painful. I remember watching every single game of that tournament that you mentioned, and I mean, it can be nice going into a series knowing that you've lost the last 5 maps in a row, and Polt is a very intelligent guy. There's no way that you forgot about that. But Polt is also the guy who's always confident. At least he always says that he is. Even though I do have the feeling that Polt is not practicing as much as he used to, and I definitely don't think it's very dedicated practice to necessarily increase either or to get better. I feel more it's just to keep a certain level, keep those mechanics going. While ForGG, I definitely have more of a try-hard feeling that he's so hungry. He definitely wants to win more. He knows that this is also a golden opportunity for him to win his second big tournament. To get those to get big paychecks. While Polt, on the other hand, of course, you know, everybody loves money, everybody loves the glory, everybody wants to win more. But let's not forget that Polt has won close to $300,000 already in his career, if he isn't over that yet.
Yeah, I mean, for ForGG, this is his time. You know, 2015 should be a massive year for him, as a lot of the other big contenders for WCS he had to play against last year that would have eliminated him oftentimes are no longer in the picture. And we immediately see that reflected in his ability to get to this top 8 after a pretty smooth ride so far. Polt's Reaper is going to be picked off, but ForGG didn't do anything crazy as far as the openings went. He went for a fast Raven, like I said, was possible. He could go for tank base push later and use the Raven's energy to fund a point defense drone so that he can hold air vision over the natural mineral line. But Polt is playing this very close to the chest. He's getting to some spread out turrets, 3 missile turrets. Polt's never been one to shy away from getting this, but it actually works against him because ForGG's not going for Banshees, man.
No, Polt is misreading this a little bit, and that's quite uncharacteristic to say the least. Normally, whenever Polt senses something, then he is right. But ForGG is setting himself up extremely defensively. I kind of feel that this is one of these moments where ForGG just gets a pretty big army of one base, and of course he's already expanding behind this, but he is going to move out, and there is a good chance that he will put these 2 tanks on the left side of the natural of Polt and try to do some economic damage just to even things up and just take it from there. Obviously, ForGG wants to draw this game out, and Polt, well, Polt wants to be explosive as he always is.
Yeah, ForGG, I mean, I like that you mentioned that, like, because for ForGG, it's not as much about the mid game, right? He likes to play the mech, but if he can end it early, he'll take a chance. Do we see that oftentimes when he throws his Hellions away versus Zerg players to get those big leads? But Polt's medevac just barely on the edge here. This Hellion, I do not believe it saw it with the vision of that Zelnaga Watchtower. So Polt has an opportunity to do something with these 8 Marines because ForGG is moving on out.
And that's a reasonable scan by Polt as well. He doesn't see anything, but with that, I would almost say he sees everything. And I know that doesn't make any sense at all, but normally he's supposed to spot units over here, Nate. He doesn't see any units. Of course, he has to worry about this army in the middle of the map because that is a strong army for this phase in the game. But if those 8 Marines kill, let's say, more than a handful of SCVs, Polt can afford to lose a little bit as well. Here comes that drop. I kind of like this. If Polt controls this properly, I really think he can do some serious work with this.
Polt's already significantly ahead in workers because of the faster expansion, and he brings the Hellions. ForGG understands what he needs to stop this, but he loses all the Hellions, and the SCVs are able to surround these Marines. At the same time, Polt has to worry about this attack coming to his base. 2 siege tanks. Polt's tank is not siege. Raven throws down turrets. Vikings land, and ForGG's looking to push him off of his natural.
Oh, the Raven is taking so much damage, Nate. That's a very expensive unit to lose. That's his only high ground vision as well. One more shot, Polt will do it. There he gets it. No more high ground vision. I guess there are 2 Vikings.
Yeah, the auto turret gives a bit of vision as well now for ForGG. It has been cleaned up though, and another tank is able to siege. So ForGG holds it home, but he loses vision of the ramp. He kills the natural of Polt though. He's done more than enough at this stage of the game, and if he pushes up this ramp, he still has the tank in range. He's starting to get volleys on his opponent's tank. ForGG can take a quick win here if he shuts him down and locks him in his base.
Wow, that escalated really quickly, Nate. I like how it started up early on. Both Vikings will die immediately, but this tank is going to get picked off, and there's barely anything left over here for Polt.
Yep, ForGG knocks down the natural, knocks down the army, and takes a very quick victory over Polt. There's nothing here to defend. A few Marines will trickle out, but we have those Hellions speeding across the map to reinforce. ForGG, he just absolutely wrecked Polt at the start of this game.
I did not expect this to escalate that quickly. Obviously, ForGG was going to do quite a bit of damage on this side of the map. I did not expect him to kill every single worker and the orbital command. One Widowmine does get a very beautiful shot up, but I'm afraid it's just a little too late. Polt has 14 SCVs left, and GG is called. ForGG takes a pretty decisive victory in game number 1.
I really like that you brought up the 8 medevac drop that ForGG picked off when these guys played months ago in DreamHack, because basically having those 8 Marines removed really hurt his defense either way. ForGG was going to lose workers to hold that drop, but he still had such a massive army to push across the map with that. Polt, even with that tank, which he did siege up very late, like he couldn't hold on.
I really thought Polt was going to be okay because of that tank. He already had a tank, and of course the 2 tanks and the Raven is very scary, and a handful of Marines and 2 Vikings. But I kind of felt that Polt, if you kill 5, 6, 7 SCVs, you already have a better economy. He could even temporarily abandon his natural and then just get a second tank, and then eventually maybe bring the Marines back that he didn't lose yet on the other side of the map after killing a few SCVs. I thought he was going to be able to clean it up, but I think you mentioned a very important thing there, Nate. He sieged his tank rather late, and in crisis moments like this, every single volley of a tank can make the difference.
Yeah, the devil's advocate side that I can play for this is if ForGG had nixed the second Viking and went straight for a medevac, Polt does not want to be sieged up in front of his natural, because then a drop going elevator into the back of his main base could have been very difficult to deal with, or even a big drop after just 1 Raven, which was meta for a very long time in this matchup. So Polt had to make a clutch call, and when you expand that fast, you don't have those tech power units fast enough to really handle this. So another tiny thing to point out is like ForGG even moved forward when he made that initial engagement on the bunker with just his tanks. They have 7 ranged, Marines have 5+1 for being in a bunker, so they can't even hit the tanks. And without SCVs being pulled there to defend, he just knocked it down super fast. Didn't have to lose any of his Marines at the start of that push.
I really felt in that moment Polt should have immediately evacuated everything that was on the low ground, move it all to the high ground. I do really like the fact that ForGG dropped those auto turrets on the high ground, because he landed his Vikings for some additional DPS, but then he lost his Raven. I was like, he doesn't have high ground vision, and then suddenly there's still 2 auto turrets over there, which are extremely annoying to kill if you don't have a bunch of stim Marines, because those guys have quite a bit of HP.
Yes, it's actually very difficult to deal with those, especially since you're able to throw them close to the siege tanks, that the siege tanks themselves can't hit them. They're too close to be within the siege range.
The dead zone.
Yeah, the tank's dead zone. Very well put, Roddy, as these guys fighting for this trophy here in the World Championship Series. This is our last quarterfinal as we move into game number 2 on Vani Research Station.
And that was 6, by the way, Nate. 6 maps in a row.
Yeah, well, he's starting to build up a bit of a record now. Of course, our blue Terran player in the north position, representing the French team Millennium, ForGG.
Love it. Thundersticks coming to the party. On the south side of Vani Research Station, we have one of the most successful Terran players of all time, representing Cooler Master Storm. It is Polt.
A very interesting question to ask at this point, Roddy, is which one of the 3 players left on this side of the bracket could actually beat Hydra? And Polt had a very, very difficult time against him. We haven't seen ForGG matched up versus him, but Bunny did take a map off of him in Gfinity.
I mean, I definitely think that Bunny and ForGG have a slightly better chance against Hydra than Polt. I feel Polt's TVZ is just not as amazing at the moment as it has been once upon a time. I don't think it's good enough to defeat Hydra. Bunny can probably make it a little closer, and ForGG, well, ForGG plays in a certain way that it's often
difficult to prepare.
Yeah, exactly. It's not so much about how good Hydra is in that matchup, how good is he dealing with the style that ForGG is going to throw at him, because it's very hard to be unpredictable in TVZ, but I feel ForGG kind of is.
That's true. He's good enough with just enough different styles that it makes him a very rough opponent. We saw him bust out both Bio and Mech in his round of 32 games, playing in Cologne. But for this map, for Vani Research Station, you have a large main base, a very large natural, that walling off the front doesn't really help you because you have that big ramp to the natural, which is tucked in the back corner of the base. Both players this time around went for gas first. We had a bit more gas banked up for ForGG, so he's actually going to squeeze out a Reaper as he does start up his factory.
Is this one of the reasons why you're such a fan of ForGG, that you just never know what you're going to get with him, that he loves both Bio and Max so much at the same time? Because there are very few Terran players that do it like that. Of course, there are a few here and there, but most people are 80%, 90% of the time Bio or 80%, 90% of the time Mech. ForGG, I would almost say it's 50-50, maybe slightly more Mech than Bio, but it's not like Bio for ForGG is a rear side.
Well, the cool thing is that, and the reason why I like ForGG so much is that he has a really good way of showing you different flavors of the same thing. Like, the Hellion play is always cute. He was going to move into it later that game, but even, just his way that he controls his Vikings and his Ravens, he recognized an opportunity where landing his Vikings would allow him to actually take the game so much faster in the last map, where a lot of Terran players might just fight for that high ground vision, and using the auto turrets very aggressively.
Would be so awesome for Polt if he would get this Reaper immediately. Of course, that's something that should not happen. If all 3 Marines were there at the right position, then I think it could have potentially happened. Unfortunately for Polt, that's something he couldn't have known. 4G hops in, saw everything that he would like to see. Is that a second Reaper, by the way?
Yes, actually. This is something that has been popping up a little bit recently.
Yeah.
This can actually be an insta-win type push, and this is something I actually had a lot of chats with about with DeMuslim, because this actually popped up in Bunny Happy series, or it might have been Marine Lord that busted it out in Fragbite. But basically, somebody like Polt, if you don't wall this off, and thankfully, thank God for Polt that he did, if these Marines are actually too close to the ring, the Reapers jump up, get vision, Hellions kill the Marines, and then the Reapers just start to snowball through. Since he can't get the Hellions in, this won't be one of those insta-kills, but 2 Reapers and 2 Hellions would be able to kill off this number of Marines. Polt's being very, very brave here, but the second Hellion hasn't shown up yet.
Nope, and of course he could always still raise those depots as well. I kind of like the way that he had his Marines, because if 4G would have picked up one more time with just those 3 units, then I think Polt has enough burst damage to take one of those units down immediately, and every single unit is worth its weight in gold. There we go, there he gets it. That's awesome, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, really nice defense there from Polt. I mean, his Marines took a bit of damage, but now he's got another one coming out. His Banshee's about to pop, so ForGG's, he looked for an opening, he looked for a weakness, but there was none to be found, and the Banshee's now making its way across the map.
Cloak halfway done, Raven just started.
He does have a Viking already out though, so ForGG will tops have to burn a scan. He almost has enough energy for it. The really complicated thing for ForGG is that he's going to try to take that natural too.
This is like a race against the clock right now. Raven will be out in roughly 30 seconds, but I do think that there is going to be a sweet spot for Polt where he will have Cloak Banshee for 5, 6, 7 seconds, and even if he just kills like 5 SFVs, I would already say that this is almost good enough. Well, the Raven is... Oh my god, the timing of 4G is disgusting, Nate.
Yeah, well, he had a scan save too, and he just dropped the mule now as he realizes, yeah, okay, I'm going to be safe, everything should be okay. The Banshee can still pick off some workers and try to run away with the range of the Raven.
I would always suicide this Banshee, just get as many SFVs as you can.
Yeah, that's
4.
I mean, Polt definitely would have wanted a lot more. Sometimes we see Terran players go for multiple, and he actually canceled.
No, he did. It's
Wow.
finished. Yeah, I was going to check as well.
I'm so very surprised he didn't build a second Banshee in that case. Sometimes Terran players like Bunny do a really good job of pulling players like this around who rely on just Vikings and Ravens and not turrets by saying, okay, put one Banshee in your main base, drag everything over there, and have another one swoop into the natural. That's one of the things that I think makes Bunny an excellent TVT player. But for this game, it's just another nice thing for ForGG on top of an already nicely started series for the Terran.
Yeah, economically, it's not bad for Polt, though. He's had a few workers, and his command center is a tiny bit quicker than one of his opponents. Of course, you know, investing in Cloak and never even being able to use it, at least for now. Let's not forget that Banshee is always something that you go fall back on in the latest stage in the game if maybe ForGG forgets about it. It's unlikely, but, you know...
Well, he is going next, so that's a very, very good point to mention, Roddy. As we see the Blue Flame upgrade is coming in, he's getting that second factory, and I imagine that ForGG wants to play around with a lot of Hellions. I find that a really good way to deal with Terrans who are aggressive with big drops in their early game, since they usually don't have a lot of upgrades with those big Marine tank drops that you'll sometimes run into on ladder, if you just have like 24 Blue Flame Hellions, you can poke around the map. Once you realize there's nothing that you can do, you sit in your base, and it's actually very easy to react to those drops since they're usually super clumped up when Terran players make them. And ForGG is even going to use this to get aggressive.
Yeah, I do like the way that Polt has positioned his units in the main base. He has a couple of units in the main, there's a couple of units in the natural, has the Viking and Raven on patrol, so he might be able to spot this almost immediately. He's going to spot it. Okay, he's going to have to bring all units over here. Don't lose any SCVs. Losing a few Marines is okay, just don't lose the SCVs.
Yeah, ForGG's moving in. He's taking a couple of blows on these Marines, and at the very least, they're going to come up a bit on the red. He doesn't really get a whole lot out of this. I mean, at this point, ForGG should know as well as anybody else that Polt's not really a mecher, so he doesn't learn too much information here.
I think this was great for Polt. Losing the Marines is absolutely no problem. Lost 2 SCVs, that's something, but he also got a medevac and 4 Hellions in return for that. So overall, I would say good defense so far by Polt, and I think that Polt is having a pretty okay read on this game, a better read than he had in the game.
So there's one very, very important thing that kind of makes TVT weird right now, and it's that when you have players who play bio go up against each other, taking a third base is considered extremely dangerous, extremely risky, and many games end on 2 bases because of that for both players.
Sounds like PvP, Nate.
Yeah, well, I mean, at this point, it's basically, oh, I move down, take my third base, and there's 6 medevacs in my natural. ForGG has just consistently been building Vikings throughout this game. He has 7 Vikings on the map. That's enough to shut down a drop because you're going to one-shot 2 medevacs before they unload, and then your Hellions arrive. Polt might still be in this mode where he's thinking, I want to play off 2 bases. ForGG is not going to do a Doom drop with this. He'll have a lot of medevacs available as he's going to use them to do probably Hellbat drops on top of them or further Hellion harass. But Polt, playing off 2 bases like this, now starting his third, I do think it's very smart that he gets a third base.
I totally agree.
But he wants to get some damage done.
I really want that, also because it's so hard to break any race and anybody on 2 bases on Vatni Resource Station because you have that pocket expand, and that ramp is very, very tiny, so it's very hard to actually just make something happen, and there isn't a crazy amount of space in the main either. The natural, of course, there is a little bit of wiggle room, but overall you're going to have a very hard time killing anybody on 2 bases, so I really like that Polt dropped that command center even before ending Rex number 4 and 5.
I think ForGG actually played a little bit greedy here.
Yeah,
I'm not so many medevacs, he actually has not built a single siege tank.
And he doesn't have a whole lot of Vikings either.
Yeah, he's going to drop auto turrets on this army and just try to engage it out on the field. A bit brave. He's going to land his Vikings at the same time, fighting against this with just pure Hellbat Viking. There are Marauders mixed in here. I'm very surprised that ForGG was willing to play with so few actual gas units to defend.
Well, and there we go. I mean, Polt lost his medevacs, he lost his tanks, but he wins that battle for sure. He also had a little bit of a rest going down. He's going for the auto turret achievement, Nate.
And I'm very, very surprised. I hadn't quite realized that ForGG just completely forwent any siege tanks whatsoever. The Hellions are good, but I don't think they're quite that good. ForGG scans and sees that he has a third.
Yeah, and look at Polt. That is definitely a sigh of relief. That is some momentum. That's what he needs in this series, Nate.
That was such a weird game.
I don't understand. ForGG did not have to do that.
Yeah, in my brain, it didn't register that it would be possible if ForGG didn't have any siege tanks. So I'm like, well, ForGG, everything kind of went his way this game. There wasn't anything bad that really happened. The Banshee got a couple kills, but for the most part, ForGG was allowed to do whatever he wanted. And going for so many medevacs just really didn't make sense to me. A couple of extra Vikings to land. Like, ForGG must have just anticipated that Polt was going to try to drag this out to be a longer game himself. And perhaps
Maybe he panicked when he saw the amount of tanks that Polt had marching across the map, and he's like, well, the last thing I want is those tanks to siege on the low ground of Vani, because they will be in range of my production structures. I don't want to deal with that. I'm just going to try to catch him off guard immediately, but he just didn't have the DPS in his army.
He didn't even queue a siege tank after he saw the army leaving the base. Like, he was still building 3 Hellions at a time, and I have to imagine that what ForGG was hoping for was probably a tank or 2 less, and for Polt to just get overwhelmed, caught out, and then just counterattack with maybe because if he wins that fight, he probably wins with a lot of Hellions left. Then he rallies across the map with how fast Hellions build. He comes over and then he just knocks down and kills Polt. I have to imagine that's the only thing he was really thinking he could get done, but Polt made his switch into his additional barracks production much faster than he expected.
And if you look at that fight, of course Polt won that fight relatively decisively, but imagine that fight with +4 Hellions or +4 Hellbats for ForGG. The 4 Hellions that he dropped into the main base that Polt just completely nullified. They barely did anything. I think then you're already looking at a different outcome. It's a 50-50 fight, I'd say. And then you're looking at a different game. Polt just handling that first drop of ForGG so extremely well, I think really set him up for an extremely good attack.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with it that ForGG was looking to receive some sort of aggression and make a big counterplay off of it, because it's the only style that you would completely just forget about siege tanks if you were going to play. Just a lot of Vikings, a lot of Hellions, a lot of fast units. But well, that's that. We're going to go to game number 3 now. Catalina, a.k.a. the crazy map for TVT. This would be a map where ForGG would probably play Bio on. He could still play Hellions. He's killed Polt with mass Hellions on this map before.
It would be insane, though. If he would actually play mech on this map, then he's going to feel the pain of a Protoss and a Zerg going up against the Bio Terran.
Yeah, ForGG didn't actually go mech on this map when they last played on it. He killed him with that 6 Marine 3 Hellion elevator that I spam every game. He's quite strong. It's quite a good build. But let's see who's going to take the edge now, as it's tied 1 apiece between these 2 world-class Terran players. On the west position of Catalina, we have Millennium's ForGG.
Probably forgot how it feels to lose a map against our red Terran that's spawning at the 12/1 o'clock position of Catalina, representing Cooler Master Storm. It is Polt.
And you know, Roddy, Polt had a lot of very interesting results based off of TVT last year. He had a lot of very important TVTs in a couple of finals. His 1 championship came off the back of a TVT, but it went from being like really good to really, really shaky.
Yeah, it was amazing. The results of Polt did not make any sense in TVT at all. 1 week he's 3-0ing Tasia, and then he flies to the next tournament 4 days later and he gets 2-0'd by Bunny like twice or something. That just like those results don't really add up, especially because Tasia never lost tournament finals up to that point, other than the one that he lost in 2012 against Hero. That was actually a super cool finals, by the way. The amount of energy and the amount of momentum that Polt was carrying after just winning the first map against Asia, that just really made it a very memorable final, despite the fact that it was a 3-0. Like, it was a 3-0 that I've really enjoyed the 3-0 as much as I did that one, and I have absolutely nothing against Asia, by the way, but that was quite magical.
Yeah, Polt also traded a lot of series against Bomber, not only in the WCS America playoff brackets, but at the Red Bull Battlegrounds events
2-3,
as well.
and WCS America 2-3 as well. He had a couple of great best-of-5s against Bomber.
And how could we forget the infamous game between Polt and Bomber, where Bomber just let 6 medevacs full of units die?
On King Sejong, and then he did it again 3 weeks later
and
on merry-go-round. It's like, no, Bomber, not again. And even Bomber thought it was really funny. And obviously Polt was wondering to himself, he's like, okay, if I'm winning these games, how do I actually end up losing the series?
It's been a very topsy-turvy road in TVT for Polt. ForGG's always been known as a very solid player in this matchup. The build orders that he goes for generally been centered around stopping most of what's popular on ladder. He plays a ton of it, and if you're ForGG and you're laddering a lot, you're running into guys like Happy, Marine Lord, Bunny, top European Terrans that honestly are kind of known for having really solid TVT as well. So you get into the position where you have a couple of really good practice partners, and Polt, unlikely to play against someone who plays like ForGG as much, but after that second game showing that he can still hang in there, play a solid enough build to deal with whatever comes his way. ForGG's going for the much faster factory this time around. Polt is once again playing for the fast expand.
I do like the fact that he's put the command center in his main base. He knows that any sort of elevator play is very strong on Catalina, and it's really hard to defend both locations at once. So if you're going to go for a better economy than your opponent, then at least play it a little safe. Put it in your main so you only have to worry about defending one location.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. And Polt actually, okay, does have that second depot. I couldn't quite see it there. But we have that Tech Lab coming in now. And this could still be a Raven. It could still be
I think
a Banshee.
No.
This is a good map for Banshee. Polt does not have the worst spawn ever. Neither player gets the bad spawn in this map.
Why is it the bad spawn, Nick?
Well, it's like the less favorable spawn because you just have so much more airspace behind your main. Like if you get the southeast position on Catalina, these two, it's much easier. Like a missile turret at the top of your mineral line will actually prevent anything from flying past.
I know, I felt the pain as a Protoss. I just want you to explain it.
You want me to explain my dirty Terran feelings to you?
That too. You do it all the time, Nick.
That's true. ForGG is going to go for Cloak Banshee this game, though, Kev. So you're spot on. And there's still the potential for him to follow this up with a really heavy Hellion play. He could still follow this up with a Raven afterwards, just to be safe. Polt's Reaper comes in, seeing a Reaper for ForGG. Awesome. Yeah, that's nice. It's nice.
Hey, he's getting a Widowmine.
Polt?
Yes.
So what I imagine Polt wants to do is use the lack of a fast Viking. Maybe he goes for a quick medevac. He could still go for a Viking, but he can put it at the edge of a missile turret vision to allow him to just tag a Banshee and then kill it if he gets just one shot off the missile turret with it.
I think he wants to be aggressive with it, though. Like, he might try to snipe the first Banshee. I would put it behind my refinery or maybe in the shadow of my command center, or just put it in a very awkward spot, which seems to be the case.
Put it somewhere where you wouldn't often see a Widow Mine. I don't think he's going to march it. Yeah, okay, he's going to put it right in this like outside area, but the Banshee is not headed anywhere in that direction.
Oh, maybe he can wiggle it all the way around, and then if the Banshee leaves the main base, it's going to fly into the mine. Yeah. If Polt can plan this out all along, I'm going to absolutely lose it, because that would be insane.
That'd be like too much for me, man. At that point, I don't know. Become a wizard. It's too much.
It's scary at the moment.
Yeah, Missile Turret and Viking are enough to shoo away the Banshee. Of course, big investment that has to be made for Polt to do that. He wants to chase this Banshee down. And ForGG is looking for a soft spot. He's looking for any weakness. So, well, I can at least force you to drop a scan. Of course, that Banshee is so low on health that a scan should be enough to kill it. He's going to bring the Marines up as well.
He wants it, and he's going to get it as well. Lost a single SCV and a scan, and then maybe one Marine or something. But I think overall, that was very good for Polt.
Yeah, this Widow Mine actually is still in a great position for any follow-up push that ForGG could do based on these spawns. ForGG, if he wants to move over towards that cliff and elevator into the main siege tanks.
I think he's going to pick up the mine with his medevac. Yep, I saw it.
Okay, that's also a pretty good move.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen this go two ways in the past. It's either amazing or often the Widowmine shoots at his own Marines and then he does a lot of damage to his medevac and then it just all comes crumbling down. The Reaper gets sacrificed, but at least Polt knows where the units of ForGG are. He's probably just going to boost into the main base, correct?
I think so. There's nothing at the natural to really do. Like, I guess now that he's been spotted, maybe he'll just drop the Marines and try to kill this. I don't know about burrowing the mine, but I guess maybe if it hits the Marines, ForGG not really paying attention there, loses a Marine, and a lot of the other ones get injured severely. Since ForGG's only building Vikings at this point, those Marines are going to stay injured for quite some time.
Yeah, let's not forget that Polt is already 6-7 workers ahead. ForGG is still indeed producing a lot of Vikings, but he is getting stim behind this, Nate, so just the Vikings alone does not necessarily mean that he's committing to a mech build or anything like that. He's moving out. He, of course, does have a small tech advantage when it comes to the tanks. He's currently on 2 tanks, so Polt already has 1 tank as well. I kind of like how this is going for Polt, but the last time I said that he died 30 seconds later, but I like it again, Nate. I'm just going to say it.
The only thing in this game that's really bad for Polt is the lack of any type of stim that he's able to set up. I still like his position with the upgrades. His tank production is looking very nice, and he's situated himself nicely on 2 bases. Keep in mind, these siege tanks are in range of the bunker of Polt, but not the tank of Polt. So ForGG can do a bit of sieging, and actually, I don't think Polt was quite aware of this, so I don't think he's in range of any of those other tanks, but he has the Viking and the Raven, so he can point defense drone and just hold the air, hold the skies for quite some time.
Really good snipe down on the medevac as well. ForGG gets a couple of volleys off, picks it off before even taking a single hit on his own Vikings. One of his Vikings is a little bit damaged, but ForGG would still win and scan. Wow. But I don't really like this.
I think I prefer to hold this position and try to inch forward. Like, he kills 1 tank, but with the other 2 here, well, ForGG's just going to move up on this anyway. He's willing to lose one of his tanks, lands the Vikings, and moves in these Marines, feeling brave as the Millennium Terran as he moves into the mineral line.
I mean, it may have been a brilliant call, we'll see, but if ForGG would have been able to contain Polt for such a long time and dominate the skies, look at the tank on the high ground. I think it's a great tank.
Yeah, good scan from Polt as he gets vision for his tanks. So he should be able to shut this down. ForGG scans, and he cannot get in position to deal with that, so the splash just wrecks a lot of these Marines, and ForGG just a bit brazen there with that push.
Yeah, great hold, of course, by Polt over here. Should probably back off right now. There's no need to chase all this
really
far.
needs to back off. He's running into tank fire in the middle of the map against ForGG. This is a bit unnecessary.
Yeah, but loses a single Viking. I think ForGG misplayed that, Nate. It was a very questionable call to use all of his energy of the Raven to get a single Seeker missile off. Like, it looked scary for a split second there, but he would have never lost control of the skies because he could have dropped a PDD.
And Roddy, Stim is just starting for Polt. He was not in any position to pull SCVs and try to bum rush down that, drop Marines on either side. He did not have the firepower necessary to take out a defensively postured ForGG, even outside of his own ramp. So definitely a bit of an overstepping by ForGG. He didn't kill too many workers. The count is still favoring Polt by a nice margin.
Yeah, quite a bit even. I would say 8 workers on a 2-base economy. He's going up to 3 command centers behind this as well.
Oh boy.
ForGG is going to look for his next opening. This might still
have Stim.
Exactly. Yeah, this might still be maybe a minute or so where ForGG will be able to make a couple of plays happen. Polt has to be careful that he doesn't get too carried away either in the success that he just had.
There is nothing in Polt's base to actually defend against this drop. Everything that comes towards that ramp should be absolutely wrecked by the Stim Marines of ForGG, and this is suddenly getting really awkward because the factory is exposed.
Yeah,
Yeah, but Polt's not going to be able to build any tanks. He might actually just kill this factory. These tanks are going to move up, and these Marines without combat shields are very vulnerable, but he can actually just step up towards that mineral line if he really wants to.
I mean, Polt does have a superior Viking number, so he can start chipping away at these medevacs. He's going to drop on top of the tanks, at least on top of one of them. I'm not sure about this engagement over here from Polt. A couple of the bio units were not fighting, Nate.
He did a really good job, actually, though, Polt, of targeting down that siege tank with just the one Marauder up front. ForGG was not target firing with his siege tanks, and now Polt has that vision advantage, so ForGG's tank should be cleaned up without too much trouble. Running back to the mineral line. I do like this. Get something for your money.
Yeah, and he can force his cancel immediately on 2 or 3 barracks, even kills one of them, maybe gets a couple of SCVs over here. Of course, this will be the end of this hit squad. He's going to work on the eBay. Well, it's not really researching anything, so that wouldn't be a disaster for Polt. Very explosive TVT, so many things happening, but I still like Polt's position, because the next time they fight Nate, he will have Stim, and he has triple orbital. Of course, losing the factory, that's not pleasant at all, but other than that, I kind of like it.
That was a phenomenal hold for Polt. He has his +1 armor and attack. His armor upgrade finished during that fight. ForGG is just now finishing his +1 attack, and ForGG is playing that 2-base style that I kind of talked about earlier on Vani Research Station. Polt realizes, like, you know what?
Slow down.
Yeah, there's actually no reason for me to throw this game trying to hold on to a third, because the one way that ForGG is going to beat Polt, at least from this position, is by attacking that third, forcing the army to go defend, and then doom dropping the main base. And Polt, very, very smart of him to recognize that that's basically the only way he's going to lose. And here we go. What did I just say?
Yeah, and of course, you know, the positions just kind of scream for it as well. That's very unfortunate for Polt. He throws down 2 scans, doesn't see the army, but what he does see is that ForGG is still on 2 bases.
Yeah, he sees no third base, and that should tell him more than enough. He's like, yeah, okay, with the amount of you just invested, oh my, he's barely, okay, now he's seen in terms of the vision there.
Oh, the unit's out of position, though. They are out of position for Polt. Again, very unfortunate. Had a scout out there, had 2 scans, and still managed to miss this. Eventually saw it because of the sensor tower, but this is a little awkward, to say the least.
I mean, ForGG really wants to get the production. He moves on top of this factory. Killing this means no more tanks for Polt, at least not from this base. He did get a second one, I believe, but it's still pretty solid. Just stay outside the vision range of those tanks, save his scans. As soon as these tanks unsiege, I think there's a really nice opportunity for ForGG to push in here. He's just using the layout of the map and the strengths of Terrence specifically.
Look at the minerals, by the way, of Polt, because Polt has been losing production structures over and over again. He can't spend his money. I just realized that he has 1,900 minerals in the bank.
Yeah, that's actually true. He doesn't have any resources. He doesn't have any way to spend his money because he only has a handful of barracks operating at this point. Now he can load up the medevacs, boost away, and now...
Oh, God, this is just becoming so painful for Polt, because obviously Polt is a player that can always spend his money,
he only has
keeps losing his buildings.
There's only 2 reactor barracks, and now he's going to come in and kill these siege tanks off, but ForGG, I mean, he's got 4 reactor barracks. He did finally get a third base. His +2 attack is on the way, and he runs up now into the natural expansion as Polt moved everything over to the main.
This is just so frustrating for Polt. He's sitting there with 2,400 minerals. If he pushes ForGG back for a couple, for another minute or so, then I'm convinced that he can finally spend his money, and then he's going to be in a phenomenal position. Imagine if all those minerals were Marines Nate. He'd be up like 70 supply.
Yeah, he'd have an absurd lead over ForGG, and this is the really, really tricky part right now. Like, having to replace the factory. He's actually starting up 2 now, as the one in the natural was protected from that attack. But all these barracks that he has to build, and the way that everything is sort of set in the top of his main, everything else he builds will be in range of that bottom left area that ForGG's been pushing.
Man, I already saw that command center dying. I closed my eyes and I thought it was done. I accepted it. Acceptance has sunk into my body, and now suddenly I see I'm still alive. I have no idea how that happened.
The dream is still alive for third base. Now Polt's going to try to come down this ramp. Takes a bit of a small trade. The upgrades are temporarily even, as +2 attack is going to finish up much faster.
No,
for
you're
Polt.
not actually going to attack right now, Polt.
I think he's under the impression that ForGG is planning down a third base, which he has. So Polt realizes that he's being contained too much. He has to make a play.
Medevac peeks in and he's like, I actually don't really see a whole lot.
I mean, if ForGG doesn't realize what's going on fast enough, then there's a big opportunity for Polt here, since ForGG has no sensor towers.
I think if ForGG wants, he stimps forward right now and kills everything and kills all of the production again. Slowly but steady, Polt is starting to spend his money. Look at that, he's producing 11, 12 Marines at a time. He's producing 3 siege tanks at a time, Nate.
Yeah, he's got a ridiculous number of factories. This drop's going to hit the natural of ForGG. Does he have enough to defend against this? I'm not sure. Now he has to manage himself over at Polt's base. I don't think he can base trade. I think Polt has a really good defensive position at his natural ramp.
Wow, this is such a great move by Polt. He's being contained, just picks up all of his units, starts attacking on the other side of the map, and he gets a phenomenal trade here.
And he does it all with 2-2. ForGG's +2 attack is about to complete, but it is not ready yet. He doesn't have the armor as well even started as Polt begins 3-3. He's spending that money now, Roddy, and he moves into the main base. I don't think ForGG can actually stop him here.
Polt has not felt this rich in forever, Nate. This is such a good moment. It was a very frustrating game for him. He had all this money, just kept losing his buildings, also because of the way that they have spawned. You know, it's so much easier for ForGG to drop Polt than the other way around. Polt, there are still 3 tanks shooting at all your reinforcements, but I almost think it doesn't matter. Polt is playing great.
Yeah, Polt played a really phenomenal game today. At least here on Catalina, he picked off a ridiculous number of SCVs. ForGG's economy is in the gutter. And this next Marine Force should be able to shut down that third base. Like ForGG, he's trying to make some magic happen, but he doesn't have anything.
Lots of Marines stemming forward over here for ForGG, but even if he gets an even trade there, it's still good for Polt. Polt has a much, much better economy. Polt is like, hey, remember the time that you were shooting at my third orbital? I'm going to return the favor. And, well, ForGG is going to try to prevent that, but he doesn't have the numbers.
And he doesn't have the upgrades either. He does pick off one of those medevacs as it loads up, but Polt is just starting to hammer away at him. And as soon as Polt starts... This is just
look at this guy, those 2 guys. That's you and me, Nate.
What he cops.
The dream.
Blowing away a tank with no hit points left.
I can see it. I have those dreams, Nate.
Polt is in a fantastic spot. ForGG still has a reasonably large army, but he's down that armor up. He's down the armor upgrade.
I guess a couple of units have been transferred in the siege line or something, right?
Yeah, that's
probably what that...
ForGG's way down on supply, but most of it is in workers. Like I said, that army supply is only down about 20, and if he can get into a weird position, like all ForGG can try to do right now is force some sort of base trade, but losing this orbital, big loss for the Millennium Terran, and Polt, all he has to do is hold this push off, and he's got the game in the bag.
Yeah, he doesn't have to take this kind of fight at all. He's going to siege up, the retreat, wait for the reinforcements. He's producing 10, 12, 13 Marines at a time from time to time. He's in a great position, and he knows it. Polt has so much momentum after that game on Vani Research, but this has been one of my favorite games of the tournament so far. Such a frustrating game, such an uphill battle for Polt, because he couldn't spend his money, but he hung in there like a champ, the champ that he is, and now he's going to win game number 3 on Catalina.
Yeah, he picks off this third base, though. ForGG is not giving up just yet. He cleared out 20 SCVs at that base. As soon as this attack gets stopped, that's when we'll see ForGG, but he doesn't want to give up just yet. Now everything's been killed. GG is called. Polt takes a 2-1 lead in this series over the Millennium Terran.
I saw some real old school magic Polt over here, man. Like, that's the Polt that we've been watching for years and years. No matter how much pressure he's on, he kept his head calm. And we often say, you know, best defense is a good offense. And it was true again. He was being semi-contained. Tanks were going up everywhere. Well, he just picked up 4 medevacs, decided to drop, killed 30 SCVs, and suddenly it's Polt game. Suddenly he bought enough time for himself to spend that ridiculous bank that he was forced to have, because ForGG did a great job in putting a lot of pressure on him. What an awesome TVT. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, just a couple things that I'd like to touch on from that game. Polt, when he got scanned and ForGG saw that there was nothing in that main base when he did his initial Doom drop, he could have just gone straight for the ramp. I feel that ForGG actually dropped too far away from the ramp because all of Polt's production was in the northeast side of his base. And if he shuts down the production then, but also gets ramp control with Stim, a concave of stim Marines, even in inferior numbers with tank support, like trying to go up that ramp to defend against that would have probably lost the game for Polt. For ForGG, he had a couple of good opportunities, but wasn't able to capitalize on
I
them.
think 2 missed opportunities in the start of the game already with that Raven. Like that Seeker missile was unnecessary. He did not need to do that. He was going to have control for a long time, would be very annoying for Polt. Polt would be forced to burn quite a few scans here and there because he would never be able to win the skirmish in the air because it's 3 Vikings against 3 Vikings and a PDD. Like you can't win that. That would just be foolish to even try to take control of the skies, and Polt knew that as well. And I think that Polt was very happy when he saw that Seeker missile going down. Of course, it makes things a little bit tricky, you know, instead of 2 tanks, you only have 1 tank. You have to reposition your units, but at least you don't have to worry about being contained and losing control of the skies forever, which, you know, is still very important in some scenarios in TVT.
Yeah, with how long point defense zone lasts, especially before that patch coming in, for Terran versus Terran, it's one of the things that make aggressive movements like that very hard to handle. The point defense zone lasts like 2 minutes, and you're sitting there. You can't win a fight with your Vikings for 2 whole minutes. That's more than enough time for ForGG to get a 3rd tank, or even just move up one of his tanks within range of Polt's.
Or even get another base and just create an economic lead. There are so many things you can do in 2 minutes. 2 minutes in a game of StarCraft 2 on this level, that's a century.
Yeah, that is, there's an absurd number of things that can happen in 2 minutes of a StarCraft game. Deadwing will be map number 4 as we load into this, and Deadwing is you know, it's a big map, but there's still a lot of airspace. Those big drops that we've seen in close to every game so far can still be very, very powerful.
Mech or bio, Nate?
I think this is, I'd like to see Mech out of ForGG on this map.
Alrighty, well, it is vertical as we are already loaded into game number 4 of our last quarterfinals, by the way. After this, it is time for the semifinals, and of course, we're going to go all the way with the grand finals later tonight, where we will crown our first ever Premier League champion, because of course, this is a new WCS setup.
That's right. We are here in the northwest position of Deadwing, the Millennium Terran player in blue. Give it up for ForGG!
The Frenchies didn't hear you, but they still clapped when they were supposed to, Nate. That's just your magic. Over here on the left bottom side of the map, the one and only Cooler Master Storm's Polt. Polt has always been a momentum-based player, though. Don't you feel like that?
Yeah. Yeah, Polt's the kind of guy that gets kind of gets into a rhythm when it comes to a play style or a certain build that he likes to do. And I actually immediately think back to what made him so successful in those TVT series that he played in a lot of battlegrounds. He kind of tailored one of these gas first openings to really fit him. And even though he hasn't been relying on gas first in this series, we've kind of got an idea that he likes to go for this Reaper expand, move into Marine tank, get late stim at the you know, the benefit of getting his natural expansion up at a reasonable time.
I mean, I think this is a very surprising score for so many people, and I'm not going to disagree. Of course, I would have put my money on ForGG as well, but it is still, like, it's always Polt, and he has surprised us so many times, and I did say that in the start of the series. It has happened too many times in the history of StarCraft 2, where you feel that Polt is not the player that he used to be, and that he can't duke it out with the big boys anymore. ForGG, one of the absolute top favorites to take it all in this season. Like, a lot of people had him as the winner of this season. You know, a lot of people thought Hydra, but Hydra or ForGG, those were the 2 biggest names going into this. And of course, Polt is right behind that. But still, this is a surprise so far, especially after Polt lost 6 maps in a row against ForGG on different tournaments. And the first one here, but now he bounced back and he won 2. And I wouldn't be surprised at all to see it ending in 3-1.
I mean, I feel that ForGG still has a little bit left in him here. And to be fair, before this series, I was hoping, you know, for a little bit of a 3-2. I thought it could have been a 3-1 in ForGG's favor just because of the history, and I know just being so aware, I guess, of ForGG's builds and being able to see so many of his games. But Polt has really shown up, and the thing is, it's not like I can say that we had some like really long drawn out games where like Polt or ForGG had a lot of opportunities to outclass each other. It's come down to like these small skirmishes, these small scrappy engagements, these situations where either player could pretty much win the game on a you know, the end of the nail.
I definitely agree with that on behalf of game 1 and game 2, but I felt game number 3 was truly great decision making by Polt, and ForGG had opportunities, but he missed them. I definitely felt that was a game where Polt played better than ForGG.
Yeah, I think the decisions from ForGG when it came to the build order was definitely a bit crazy. I'll give you that. Yeah.
You better.
Buddy, please.
It's another starport opening over here, double gas. So could be another Banshee opening for ForGG. Polt handled the Banshee very well on Catalina. Lost a single SCV, maybe a Marine, and then he burned one scan and he got it. And that was pretty much everything that the Banshees achieved on that map. Banshee of Polt wasn't much more successful on Vani, but at least got a couple of extra kills.
Yeah, the thing is, this is still a really big map. There's still a lot of different directions that Banshee can enter from. Chasing the Banshee down with the Vikings is very, very difficult. ForGG says, well, why are you guys talking about a Banshee? I'm just going to build a Raven.
It's like, hey.
I still would like to see ForGG, you know, play this out with going for an expansion next if he can, and then moving into another factory. I'd love to see that neck play against Polt on a big map like this. These spawns are definitely a bit better. You can kind of go straight down the map. And this is also one of those maps where, because of the spawns being so narrow of a path between the bases, Vikings with the sensor towers can actually respond pretty quickly to big drop play.
It could, of course, very well be a very similar build to what he used on Overgrowth. You know, don't fix it unless it's broken. Worked phenomenal for him on Overgrowth. Could be the same over here, but that wing is a little bit longer than Overgrowth, so it will be a lot harder to march across the map with 2 tanks, a Raven, a handful of Vikings, and a bunch of Marines.
Yeah, I guess it's still a reasonable choice, though, because this map has that open space. You don't have to worry about the cliff as much, which makes it easier for doing things like landing those Vikings. And ForGG's already going to instill a bit of fear in Polt's heart, right? Polt going for the 3 turrets again. He's not taking any chances based on what his Reaper has seen. He knows that ForGG is someone who will punish him if with his control, right? ForGG's not just going to die to his scan. So have the 3 turrets, protect your add-ons, protect your mineral lines, and play safe. Polt believes he can win the macro game. He wants to have that economic edge, and so far he's got it.
I mean, I feel this is almost a mirror image of Overgrowth so far. Polt, again, of course, investing in those missile turrets. That's something we didn't really bring up, but that didn't help him in defending on Overgrowth. You know, he made an eBay very early on, and he made 3 missile turrets that, of course, couldn't participate in the battle.
Yeah, it's a lot of resources to invest to survive that early game, and you're definitely right, Roddy. But something else that you pointed out that's still very important for us to keep in mind, the rush distance on this map, not quite the same as Overgrowth. If he wants to make that big push, Polt will have that tank out. Although, to be fair, he had the tank last time, it just wasn't sieged for whatever reason.
Yep, and a little bit out of position as well. Well, it's very similar. ForGG is going to go for it, man. Bunch of Marines. He has a Viking, he has a Raven, and tank number 2 is about to pop. Polt has probably identified it by now. He's going to throw up a second bunker too, and he already has his 1 tank. This time you better siege it, Polt. And I mean, it's still a very awkward scenario, because of course ForGG has slightly more units, so he's going to be in an okay-ish scenario. But Polt also starting to produce Vikings a little sooner this time, I feel.
Yeah, this is Polt trying to get a little bit of air control. This Widow Mine from Polt is really nice, as it's going to force him to just burn something here or take a lot of time to get through. So he opts to just trade a Marine out to get rid of that quickly. And the Viking getting the first shot is very nice for ForGG. Yep. Keep in mind that he always has
Raven.
Yeah, I have a feeling he's going to try to use point defense drones to crack this. Like, he could play for the siege, which I generally find to be a bit of a safer choice, but ForGG's been showing some reckless play so far in this series. He does start up a factory, though. He's got Hellions and Cloak Banshees on the way behind all this.
He's going to cast a Seeker Missile almost immediately again. Tank is going to try to run away, but won't really succeed in doing so. Even blew up 1 Marine in the process. But now, of course, the Raven doesn't have energy, which means that Polt can control the skies, moves forward, picks up the Vikings, but does he have enough to actually defend against the Marines and Hellions?
His tanks are in range of Polt's tanks, so he's able to swat them down. Now, Polt, I believe he did just finish another siege tank. He really needs to just keep this bunker alive, otherwise ForGG can make a big move in on this.
All right, 2 tanks getting in range right now of the bunker. Scan goes down. One of the tanks is very low, of course, for ForGG. Very interesting enough, Cloak just finished up as well, as there is a Cloak Banshee on the way for ForGG right now.
Yep, he does have, as you said, Cloak finished. There's that missile turret there, though, and this Viking. He could try to swing in from the left side, and he would actually be out of range of that vision. He does have other scans available, but he's also gaining vision for these tanks to get some volleys off,
That's
too.
a really cool build, of course, but ForGG is going to force these tanks to reposition a little bit. Scan goes down, but he won't be able to kill the Banshee just yet.
And ForGG can swoop right in once again after this scan wears off. He's just being as annoying as possible. He throws another scan in. These Hellions are going to move down and target the Marines. They get on top of the siege tank, and the Marines are actually able to kill Polt's siege tank. So ForGG clearing out the tech once again. Now Polt did pick off ForGG's tanks behind all of this, so it's just naked Marines fighting naked Marines here in the natural of Polt.
We're back to the Stone Age. No upgrades, no extremely good weapons, no tanks either. Just a few Marines. the
Hellions roll up with the support of Banshees, and Polt's SCVs start to burn up. The Banshee with the Hellion support is too powerful for these Marine forces, and the whole natural of Polt cleaned out.
Yeah, it's very exposed right now. I'm not sure what Polt is supposed to do. He's trying to muster out as many units as he can, but it's just one by one. He has already lost 17 SCVs. He was doing an absolutely phenomenal job in hanging in there for so long, but in the final seconds, this completely spiraled out of control. With the final bit of juice that ForGG had in that push, he was able to get the damage done that he was looking for.
Now he's still building Banshee. He's still building just Hellions. No tanks for ForGG. This Banshee's going to move in. He's going to make a play on this siege tank once again, force out another scan from a very broke Polt, who just lost an absurd number of SCVs in this game. And then these Hellions with Blue Flame could actually just run in and kill everything right now.
It's a very cool build by ForGG, the way he all sets it up and the way that the Cloak Banshee shows up in facing the game where you could really use it. And then the Seeker Missile makes a lot more sense, of course.
Yeah, the thing is, when you move the Marines in and try to hit this Banshee, they all clump up, and that lets the Hellions just run in, get a ridiculous amount of damage off, and clean all these forces out. Once again, the Hellions starting to target down the SCVs of Polt. He does have Stim, but more Blue Flame Hellions are rolling on in, and he's having a very, very difficult time handling this pressure from the Millennium Terran.
Yeah, even if he stabilizes right now, he's so far down economically. Look at these Hellions. They're just going to go in. They surround the siege tank.
The dead zone, Roddy. They're in the dead zone, and so are these SCVs now as he fries the rest of them up, left behind in the natural. Polt stuck back on one base. He squeezes out a Marauder, but there's actually enough Hellions here to deal with this at this point. Polt, he just has to sit here, wait for another wave of units as he continues to run out of money.
Pretty damn awesome. This is a 13-minute game, Nate, or 14 minutes soon, but it feels like it's been going on for 20 minutes already. There's just like this non-stop onslaught going on in the natural of Polt, but eventually ForGG was finally able to get that opening that he was looking for so hard. He was definitely pushing the issue, and he was almost starting to run out of steam. It almost seemed like Polt would stabilize, but then once again, in the final moments of that push, he finally got the damage that he was looking for. 17, 18 SCVs, 20 even in the end. Great timing on the Banshee, great timing on those additional Hellions.
And the rest of the Hellions are going to run in. He uses the splash to hit the Marauders while he targets down all of the Marines. And yeah, Marauders are good, but they're not that good. Actually, ForGG changes his mind. He's just going to go for the SCVs anyways. Like, yeah, okay, maybe they were weak, but now you're not mining any money again. So once again, you're broke. Have fun trying to build more Marauders after that, Polty.
These Hellions are not even done yet. They might actually get a couple of SCVs in the main base as well. The main base that's of course starting to run dry because a lot of mules have gone down over here as well. And this is the base that he's been mining for the majority of this game. It's an absolute massacre once more. 17 SCVs, maybe even 19 over here. Look at this.
Polt sitting at 12 workers versus a 3-base ForGG, who's now building 3 tanks at a time. He's getting his +1 upgrades for his mech. And Polt, I mean, the production tab tells a pretty somber story for this game, Roddy.
Yes, no, there is no matter how we spin this one, Nate, my TVT is not very good, but I think I could win in the position that ForGG is in right now, as he just has everything going for himself. 4th command center, producing Hellions and Vikings, producing siege tanks as well. As one more upgrades are about to kick in, he's just going to send these Hellions past the army, get a couple of Marines, and then kill a few more SCVs, because why not?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, ForGG's just having a barbecue. I think he knows that he's got this game in the bag. He's going to try to end it with the tanks later on, as I'm sure he'll start to move out once he gets a little bit more supply. But he's basically just cutting off any chance that Polt could recover from this. He's still back at 13 workers now.
We all know there's nothing more fun than playing a game you know you can't possibly lose.
Yeah, because it also gives ForGG a bit of time to think about the next map if he wants. He's like, oh, this feels so good. Let me just demoralize him a bit. I don't need to push across. I don't want to. Let's not end this.
No, like
I'm having a ball.
Yeah, you're making fun of it, but it's definitely like that though. It's very fun to play a game that you know you're going to win, because now for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes you're in a very joyful state. It's very relaxing for your mind because you're playing this game with a smile on your face. You can lean back in your chair. You can be like, nice. Yeah, sure. Yeah, you think you can stabilize and you kill a few more SCVs. He's like, let me throw up a bunch of extra factories. Not like he would ever need them. Like if he truly wants right now, I think he could win the game with Viking SCV if he would push it hard enough, Nate.
He certainly has that option, but Polt's getting ready to move. He wants to receive this army unsieged. Generally, in a real game where both players are at an even amount of supply, this is how the Bioterran wins. But I don't actually think ForGG needs to siege these tanks. He's got Banshee support on top of it, Vikings to kill the medevacs, and a hell of a lot of Hellions to sweep everything underneath. GG, ForGG ties the series 2-2 here on the WCS Top 8.
awesome quarterfinals so far. Definitely the most evenly matched quarterfinal I'd say we've seen. I mean, maybe not on paper, but definitely in the way that the games have been played out. But ForGG was awesome in game 1. Very decisive. Game number 2 and 3, I almost felt like it was all Polt, despite the fact he was under a lot of pressure. Game number 4, I was almost starting to feel that Polt was in not a good position if he would stabilize, but ForGG just never let him stabilize. Came down to that very funny fight of a bunch of unstim Marines with no upgrades against each other, and then you felt that that was kind of it, and then these 2 Hellions show up, and that one Banshee that just completely ruined the party for Polt.
Yeah, just a lot of great control coming out of ForGG in that game to utilize a position that we both kind of questioned a bit. He lost the Raven pretty early on, like he made these aggressive moves, but he just, you know, I guess when you do it enough, you find yourself in a great position. Let's hear what the guys at the desk have to say over about this series so far.
Thank you very much, Nathanius. What a fantastic series so far. This has played out excellently. We're having a lot of entertainment watching this game. It's very high level. 2 of the best players going at each other in this Terran versus Terran for that final slot in the semi-finals. We're at an even match right now. It's 2 wins and 2 losses, Todd. Guys, what do we think of the series so far?
Highly intense series so far. A lot of aggression on both fronts. Both players barely ever going up for those 3 bases. We're seeing a lot of drop-in, a lot of aggression in the early game. ForGG even finishing off with his signature move right there with the Blue Flame Hellions at the end of that game. But yeah, it's all been about the... actually, let me get my head on straight here. Basically, it's been about ForGG trying to get the lead in the early game, and if it hasn't, then Polt has pulled out his signature move, which is the dropping. We saw that on Catalina. ForGG tried to drop him, but then Polt came back, dropped back on his side of the map, and we all know what happens when Polt starts dropping. He just takes games down left, right, and
There's been a very definite contrast in the wins on both sides. ForGG is winning with his initial aggression and able to just power out through there, and then if it goes further than that, Polt's able to win out. So going later on, I wonder what we're probably going to be seeing from ForGG.
Yeah, a very back and forth game so far, but I want to take a close look at that last map here on Deadwing, the defining moment that gave ForGG the opportunity to go to game number 5, which we'll be going into very shortly. This was the push that ForGG designed to break Polt's natural. All Polt needs to do at this point, Todd, is hold on to this position, but unfortunately he wasn't able to.
Yeah, Polt, right now in this situation, it really feels like he was a lot more uncomfortable than ForGG was. You know, ForGG is the guy that uses tank in TVT every single game. Polt does as well, but usually it's Marine tank versus Marine tank. So here ForGG is setting up the siege, and the way he always goes for the attacks and macros his unit perfectly is usually because he's been in this situation so many times. You know, we've talked about this. It's his comfort zone right there.
And that was the power of what we've saw from ForGG at the very start of all of that. Having an early Raven, not only great defensively if you're going to be going up against Banshees, but also offensively. You saw that Polt Vikings were a little bit hesitant at going forward before the energy was spent on the Raven, because there could have been that PDD to slow down the power.
And then the combination of Cloak Banshees came in, and this just started to get worse and worse and worse. After the initial bunker's gone down, you do have a second layer of defense as a Terran, right? But with the Cloak Banshees coming in, energy being used not to kill the Banshee, this was destined to win.
Yeah, and then he tries to come back here, Polt, trying to defend with his siege tanks, but he doesn't really have the range that he needs, and ForGG just comes back in. The siege tanks are always already at the front because he's trying to pick off ForGG's siege tanks, and then he just picks them off. And then from this point, it looks like Polt is almost holding, but then you see on the production tab there's that blue flame follow-up.
3 Hellion Banshees, and once the actual defense is broken, that was the end of it for Polt there. He let the flood in, and ForGG took full control. Guys, last map is going to be Inferno pools to decide which player semi-finals. It is one of the least played maps in the WCS, as everyone seems to veto it on ladder. They must go toe-to-toe on this. Quick thoughts before we go and get ready for this.
I think that this is probably going to be a ForGG map. I think that he's going to open it aggressively. I think he's going to go to his trademark Hellions, and defending your natural location on Inferno pools with the ramp being the size it is can be extremely difficult.
All right.
I'm going to take it the other way. If it's close positions, I'm going to say it's a 4GG map with the early aggression. If it's the vertical positions, I'm going to go with a Polt map because of the drop potential.
Todd, anything to add in here?
I'm going to stick with Polt, but so far, as we said, it feels like whoever pulls ahead early on gets the win in the end. So it's going to be very important to pick the right build order. But I mean, as you said, since this map is played so few, usually, it's going to be tricky for them to pick a build order. I can't even imagine what's going on through their heads right now.
Yeah, a very intense moment here in the Worlds Championship Series. We're going to go to a very quick commercial break, and when we return, it's going to be Game 5 on Inferno Pools.
I move objects with my mind. I climb the tallest mountains and slay dragons. I defend my galaxy from ruthless aliens. I am never bored. I am stronger. I am faster. I am G1.